They say opposites attract.
Well, how about these opposites? Daddies and sons.
You're listening to Daddy and Son.
A podcast where we explore the dynamics of daddy and son relationships, multi-generational views,
And everything else in between.
And welcome back to another week of Daddy and Son. My name is Alex.
And I'm Norm.
And this week we're going to be discussing communication styles.
Yeah, I mean, communication is how human beings interact, right? But the question here is, do older and younger folks communicate differently within their own generation, between the sort of ages? And how do they think with themselves? I mean, do you communicate with yourself as an older person differently than, say, you do, Alex, as a younger person?
Well, you know what? I don't necessarily feel like I am and I probably said this last week as well, I'm not the best judge of or spokesperson or specimen for millennials, because I do think of myself as an old soul. But the one thing that I will attest when it comes down to communicating with myself is that I do feel like I have a lot of the tools to clean up in-house, per se. Like I have really good interpersonal skills. So if there's a situation that something does happen, even if I'm gonna come and like take things externally, I'm gonna like go to a therapist or go to a friend, or you know what I mean. I'm not going empty-handed. I'm going with thoughts in mind.
Well, that's a very mature way of dealing with a problem or dealing with an issue. I think, though, that generally speaking, and I think of this as older and younger. I mean, daddy and son symbolizes the difference of age groups in a gay relationship. But generally speaking, I find younger people aren't quite as refined in the way they communicate as they used to be. There isn't the courtesy, for example, these days. Do you know what I mean?
You see, well, this is where I'm gonna kind of just interrupt because interject because I don't necessarily agree with that, and I'll give you a good anecdote. So recently, I have a friend in my life, and he is in his mid-50s. So we can call him Baby Daddy.
I know where you're going with this, by the way.
And he has a tendency of just calling me out the blue, and it'll be like, oh, I'm just checking in, just want to see how things are going. And I said to him a couple of days ago, well, don't oh my gosh, this episode is very telling to everything that I'm kind of going through right now.
By the way, what's wrong with that?
Well, the thing is, I think in this day and age, it's the proper thing to do is to text someone and say, hey, are you free for a phone call right now? Rather than just calling out the blue. You don't know what my situation is. You don't know if I'm able to take the call, X, Y, and Z, or what you may be interrupting. Like I could be recording like this podcast right now, or it could be a situation where I am at work doing a presentation and I just see the call come in and I'm thrown off. So that person's response to me, Baby Daddy's response to me was, so why couldn't you just answer and just say, hey, I'm doing something right now. Can I call you back?
Well, I have news for you. I agree with you. I prefer to have somebody let me know. And I usually, especially in a business context, usually send an email to people, or even as I phone them, say, is this a good time to talk?
Exactly.
That's a courtesy.
It's a courtesy. But he thought it was very... It made the relationship between us seem more professional than friendly, and I didn't see it that way. I just thought it was just general etiquette.
Yeah,
and that was that was me. You know what I mean? So I don't necessarily think that it's
It's an older or younger
or
thing.
younger or older.
It's a
younger
personal
thing.
preference, right?
I think it's a personal thing. It's an
Yeah.
interpersonal thing.
So the issue then is, how do you settle that difference in communication styles? In your example, you kind of wanting a different way of being communicated with than he does. Did you agree on a different way for next time?
Well, you said this to me last week off air that I can be very intimidating.
Not all the time.
Not now.
You're very direct, and I think that is one of the styles I've noticed in younger folks is a bit of a lack of sometimes tact, and sometimes it doesn't matter. Other times it's inappropriate.
And okay, so give me an example of when would you deem it to be appropriate versus inappropriate to be direct with someone? Because would you not rather live in a world where people are you know what they want rather than you have to be playing the guessing game or tiptoeing or being on eggshells?
Well, certainly in a business context, sometimes it pays not to be totally direct. It depends on the situation. And I would suggest that perhaps a more mature person would have a better idea, generally speaking, of knowing what the right thing and how to say something is. But that's not always the case.
True.
I mean, I prefer younger people who are mature, acting and thinking. I think I said that last week, and if I didn't, I'll say it this week and probably say it more than once in this podcast.
And this is the reason for me that I don't necessarily put things into one category, because then you'll run into or even saying that, oh, this is a trait of younger. Well, not to say that stereotypes don't exist for a reason, but again, this is something that I've run into not just with baby daddy, but with other daddies in my life that I communicate with, and so. I'll probably get into another anecdote from another point of view on this in a moment. But this is particularly the reason I like to just be clear and upfront about how I want to be communicated with and how I like to be communicated with. Probably if you asked me this.
And that should be respected.
And that should be respected. It's like a boundary, right?
Absolutely.
And if you asked me this 3 years ago, I probably would not have this level of introspection. I think.
You mean you wouldn't have cared so much?
No, absolutely not.
All right.
For listeners, I am now currently 30 years old, and I think that
a mature 30-year-old, I might add.
There was something about turning 30 that it was kind of like a light switch. Like it's something just flipped in my brain, and
that happened with me too.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I might add.
And did that affect how you communicated with people?
Well, I know I communicated with a lot fewer people. So yes, I guess that's the answer to your question. Yes, it did.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. And we are back, folks. So we are going to kind of segue a little bit into communication styles and preferences, and I think it's very important to kind of look at how multi-generational, how we prefer to be communicated with. As an example, I prefer texts. If you call me, chances are probably I won't pick up. My phone has been on silent for the past 3 years, and it has never been off silent, and I swear to God, it has not. If you call me, don't leave a voice message like an old person. I will not respond. Chances are 9 out of 10 times my voice messaging service will be full.
Well, by the way, first of all, this is the first time I'm hearing this. I didn't know that. And secondly, you have no hesitation in picking up the phone and calling me when you want to, without, I might add, texting me in advance to let me know if it's a good time to talk.
Well, you're of a different generation. You're the generation that likes when people call. Did you prefer when I text?
Not necessarily. I tend to text a lot myself.
Really?
In fact, yes. In fact, at least even in a personal context.
But I find that you use WhatsApp a lot.
Well, that's texting.
I guess
it's not voice. It's not picking up the phone. You know, I mean, sometimes you don't want to have when you talk to people on a phone, there's a sense that you should be spending a little time talking to them when really you only want to say one or two quick things. And that's why texting is so good. And in this hurry up age, texting is the right thing, young or old, daddy or son.
I'll concur with that too.
I'm glad to see we agree on something today.
I'll concur with that. I don't necessarily like the use of WhatsApp per se. Texting I treat like a telegram. If you're going to text me, it should be something that, like, don't text me an epistle. Like, I have friends who will send me texts and it's like multi-pages. If you're going to text something like that, you might as well just give me a call. Just ask.
I agree.
Ask me, is now a good time to talk? When can I talk with you? Or we can schedule a time frame in which to have a chat. But WhatsApp, and I think it has a lot to do with my line of work. I don't know per se, or maybe it's just my thought process around data mining from Meta, but I don't even like using WhatsApp. I don't like it as a platform. I don't like using it. I only use it out of necessity. And if I can, I always tell folks, iMessage. Especially if you have an iPhone, like why are you WhatsApping me in the first place?
So I look at those two things as I'm indifferent. To me, they're the same thing. It's the medium. It's text, it's a phone, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Google, whether it's whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. I'm surprised you see a difference between the two. To me, they're. I've never
It's
even
not
thought
the
of it that way.
usage. It's not so much the usage as it is the company, because one company will traverse through your messages, use them to create ad revenue, and that's just part one. Part two is
Most people have no concept or awareness of that, and for most people, it's irrelevant. You're a techie; that's important to you, which is fine.
privacy
You
is
have a right-
super important to me, and I think that whether you're a techie or not, privacy is something that should be relevant to every single person. And that seems to be a concept that Google and Facebook don't know about. It's not in their vocabulary. It's not in their constitution. And that's why...
Privacy does not produce profits. That's why.
And privacy does not produce profits. Unfortunately, spending a lot of money for an iPhone does. And
Yeah.
Apple Care. And that's how Apple makes their money. And I'd rather just pay a lot of money for my privacy and have a one device than, be forced to use a native app that is going to be collecting my data, whether it's free or not, and selling it to other governments and private companies for advertising purposes.
Let me
But
ask you a
that's me.
question. When did you last write a letter to somebody?
You know what? It's been a moment, but I'm going to do one very, 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 very soon, actually.
And why will you write that letter rather than phone or text or send an email?
It's a generational thing.
Is the person you're going to communicate with older, younger, same age?
Yep, they're 80 years old. 80? Maybe 80
And they don't use a
something.
computer,
Um,
I'm guessing.
they don't even know how to use WhatsApp.
Okay, there you go. But you know what? That's great. I think that's great. You're choosing the right communication style for that situation, and that's what we should be doing.
Or making assumptions, like I did with you.
What did you assume with me?
Assume that you're of the generation that prefers a phone call over a text message.
I find phone calls often irritating, usually because I'm doing something like watching a baseball game or trying to read something or write something.
Listeners, Norm is a real jock over here. He's a real jock.
But you know what? When you get a phone call, if it's someone who's calling you that's important, and you are,
No.
you stop what you're doing and you take the phone call and you say, you know what, Alex, that's great. Can we talk about it in half an hour, or can I call you back tomorrow?
Yeah.
I mean, that's courtesy, right? It comes back to courtesy, respecting boundaries, and what's right in the situation.
All right, but I'm going to throw out a scenario here, right? And this is in terms of dating. Both Eddie and Son scenario. If you were in a relationship with someone, and I don't want to say that this, let's say, yeah. So put yourself in this scenario. You're the daddy, you're dating a son.
Yep.
So I'm going to say someone 35 years or less. And that person may appear to be a little bit needy. Appear, and I say appear, because they may be, you know how young people are, at least how I am. If I'm having a bad day or if I'm going through something quite emotional, um,
You want to talk about it.
I want to talk about it. And I
Sure.
want to talk about it with the person that I am in a relationship with. And
In that case, you should be defining or determining the right communication style. And the other person, the older person in this case, should say, hey, I know Alex is going through a tough time on something, or I should respect how he wants to communicate with me. That's maturity on whether you're younger or older. It's a matter of making the right decision at the right time for that situation.
thank you. You know what? I agree with you, because
Okay.
I just came out of a relationship earlier this summer with a guy that everything else in our relationship was great. I thought that he would have been a good partner. We had amazing dates. We really clicked whenever we were in a room together, whether alone or with other people. And I thought we would have made a very beautiful couple. However, he did not appreciate the fact that I would rather see him in person rather than he would.
What did he do? Want a video chat?
Not even. He would only communicate with me maybe once or twice per day, every other day.
I call that the stiff arm approach. You do that in football, but not in personal relationships.
Is that what stiff arm is?
Yes.
I was thinking about something else,
Well,
but
stiff
I
arms
just
and
came
stiff
back from
something else
Berlin,
is a
ladies
different.
and gentlemen. So
right.
my mind has gone to BDSM, but I digress. Um, and I'm thinking of it from the perspective of, he said to me the day that I decided to break up with him that we're not married. We're only in a boyfriend and boyfriend relationship, and he only needs to see me when he wants to see me, and not necessarily when I want to,
Yeah, so
to
he
have
wasn't
a
serious.
conversation with him.
Let's face it, he wasn't serious.
And so I thought about it, like, I don't think that he's a bad person. I don't think he's a bad person. I just think that he wasn't the right person for me, because we just had very different communication styles.
Well, I would also suggest that maybe there was
needs.
some emotional immaturity on his part in terms of respecting what you wanted and needed.
You know what? And I will agree with that 100%. And
This is going well tonight, hon. We're disagreeing on very few things, which is a good sign in a positive daddy-son relationship, which we have on a platonic level,
absolutely,
because
I concur.
we have a mature communication style, because we can tell when each other is kind of bugged about something,
Yeah.
and we'll say, what is it? And then you take the time to listen in the communication style that the other person wants to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad that you touched on that, because I've experienced that multiple times with you throughout the years, where I've called you or messaged you and I could tell something was off. And I'd give you a call, and sometimes you'd say, you know what, I'm not necessarily in the mood to talk right now, or your usual term is I'm just tired. I'll call you back later. I'll talk to you later, and I respect that. But
You do.
you at least have this, you communicate that to me in a very emotionally available way
I'm direct.
and direct.
Yeah.
And that for me is golden. That's gold. And I would like to see that dynamic in more daddy-son relationships that I may have in the future.
So why are people afraid to be direct and honest with each other and just say, listen, I don't feel like talking right now? Or can we do this another time? Or why don't you send me a note? Whatever. What's the holdback? Why do people hold back their true feelings of what they want?
Well, why do people ghost? Why do people lie? I think it all boils down to folks just not being able to articulate themselves for whatever reason that may be.
You know, you ask a good question. Why do people ghost? Know a young man I met recently, and we had a wonderful couple of days together. And then all of a sudden, 5 days of absolutely nothing on WhatsApp. No phone call, no texting. And I'm thinking, what gives here? And then I sat back and said, you know what? It's his right to do that. I might not like it, but you know what? That's the way it is. And a lot of people waste a lot of energy consumed over, oh, what did I do? Or why is he like that? Baloney. Let it go. If he's meant for you, if you're meant to have a friendship, relationship, it will come back.
I agree. There's no need to chase something or someone if they're not in the place, whether mentally or emotionally, to be able to communicate, to provide you with care.
That's a good one. I like that expression. With care.
With care.
With respect, with sensitivity.
Exactly. I don't necessarily think that, and this is why I even looking back at in my Daddy's Son situation that ended this summer, I said, you know what? I don't necessarily feel like you're a bad person. And a friend asked me just last weekend, granted this was nearly 5 months ago, but they asked me this weekend, do you miss this person? And I said, it's hard to miss someone that you never communicated with in the first place.
There wasn't much there.
There wasn't much there. So the answer to that is absolutely not. I'm more likely to miss other people that have brought me grief in my life, but they were present.
Well, I can be honest with you. I don't miss most people that have caused me grief. But I do think about them occasionally. I miss the people that brought love and warmth, who I don't see anymore, or good memories.
Yeah.
And that's a sort of self-communication style. I want to talk about self-communicating, because how we think in our head about things going on around us, how we think about ourselves, is a very important communication style. You have to know who you are. You have to have a sense of who you are. And as that develops, your communication style with others will be right. Will be right for that situation. And what I really like in younger people is a recognition that they understand that and they're working on it.
Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Shout out to all the young people out there who have good attachment styles, who they're comfortable with themselves and cozy. They're cozy with themselves and they're able to know what they want and articulate that perfectly.
And I would argue, and this may not be what everybody agrees to, that the most successful daddy-son relationships, whether they're friendships, lover relationships, FWB relationships, are ones where there's an understanding about each other, where each other is at, and they're comfortable with each other, and they respect each other's needs to be silent sometimes and vocal at others.
Absolutely. And you know what? This week has been pretty much 100% very... the topic that we're discussing today, it's 100% very relevant to everything that I'm going through this week. And I'm not just talking about for this podcast. I'm talking about at work. I'm talking about, because my boss is an older gentleman, so I'm even including that as a daddy-son relationship. My boss and I are pretty close, but I don't think that he's the best communicator. I hope he's not listening to this podcast. But he's not necessarily the best communicator, and communication is something that I find grief around and give me some anxiety around. And even my relationship with people that I'm currently dating, or communication with you, or communication with my gay parents. It's this week has been very themed around what we're talking about right now. So when you said that this is what you wanted to talk about, I was like, God put his hand in it.
Hit the nail on the head. I want to share one thing before we
go.
Yeah, and
What's
that is,
friend?
I got together with a group of business school colleagues last night for dinner. Some of them I hadn't seen for over 30 years.
Nice. How was that?
And we had a great time. But as I was sitting, listening, and chatting, I realized, I don't totally feel part of this. I know more people that are a third of their age than I do this group. And in some ways, I have more identity with a younger person than people my own age. It really became evident to me.
How so?
Well, they've gone their own way in life, and I've gone my own way, and I just, I don't have kids. I don't have a cottage in Florida or a second home in Florida. They didn't have a sensitivity of some of the young artists or some of the issues that younger people talk about. I just realized I'm on a younger wavelength because of my contact with younger people than they are. Even though they got kids, most of them have kids.
Yeah, but but it's different. There's a difference between having kids and being disassociated from, I'm raising these kids versus,
Yes.
You having a son, having sons in your life, and having an association or building a relationship with these sons that keep you more up to date with not just like pop culture, but social issues that are intersectional of the age barriers or the age differences, I should say.
It was interesting. One of my colleagues was who I knew quite well in business school. We got a sort of a side chat at the last moment, and he admitted to me that he had a gay son.
Oh.
And I thought, that's interesting. He opened up, I opened up, and we sort of opened up a channel of communication. We're going to have another chat probably. But interesting. I'm going to learn from that what's his relationship with his son.
That would be interesting to know.
Is it a model? In what way does it resemble a gay daddy-son relationship? In this case, it's a straight daddy, gay-son relationship, but it's still a daddy-son relationship.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. So maybe we'll do a podcast on that when I've had a chance to.
Once you've got a chance to chat and catch up.
Yeah.
Well, keep me posted and updated, Daddy. I'd love to know.
I will, son.
And I want to pass this off to you, audience. You can sound off in the comment section wherever you are listening to this podcast, whether it is in the SoundCloud streets or in Apple. Let us know. What is your preferred communication style? How do you like to be communicated with your lovers, your friends, that special older daddy in your life? And we will be here again next week.
And if there's something we didn't talk about that we should talk about next time, let us know that as well.
Absolutely. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.